What we've come up with as an agreement is not what I would have written, and certainly not what any senator would have written. There are parts of it that I don't care for at all, and other parts that I think are very wise. That is the nature of compromise. I do not believe that I have compromised my principles as a person or elected official in coming to this agreement. At some point, you have to sit at the table and look the other side in the eye and realize they feel just as strongly as you do. And the only common ground will be found between you, and not when you give up or the other side gives up. Let me tell you what I think are the pluses and minuses of what we are about to consider during the course of this day. First, we have averted an economic crisis if both House and the Senate should approve this measure. The notion that we would default on our national debt for the first time in our history as of midnight tomorrow night would be devastating. Devastating to a weakened economy with more than 9 million Americans out of work. It would have raised America's interest rate on its own debt, adding to our national deficit. Individuals, businesses, families, they would feel it. And their credit card bills and student loan debts and automobile loans and home loans, and businesses trying to engage in borrowing to expand the size of their business or the developments that they're undertaking. So averting that crisis was the #1 achievement of any agreement that we reached among our leadership. The fact that we don't have to revisit this crisis on a weekly or monthly basis is also a positive step forward. We need to address our deficit. This nation cannot be great, cannot continue to grow, borrowing 40 cents for every dollar government spends. That is an unacceptable approach. And we need to reduce that dependency on borrowing and reduce the debt that we're creating. And by reducing spending, that's the starting point. We are a great and caring nation. We have created a safety net of programs so that we don't see homeless on our streets any more than necessary because of the inadequacy of our programs, and we don't see a blind eye when it comes to the suffering that many families are going through. I'm sorry that we are making some cuts, but we are protecting most of the safety net programs, such as Medicaid, the health insurance program for the lower income people in America. Who counts on Medicaid? 1/3 of the children in America have their health insurance through the Medicaid program. Almost 50% of the live births in America are paid for by Medicaid. In addition, many elderly people, even those on Social Security and Medicare, have to turn to Medicaid to sustain them in their nursing home and convalescent home settings. So protecting Medicaid as part of this package is a very, very important thing as far as I'm concerned. I would also add that this approach that we're using here is more balanced than some. I want America to be strong and safe. Everyone does. It's part of our Constitution that we swear to uphold. But there's money being wasted in the Department of Defense. There are contracts that are overrun, money overspent, and there's a lack of oversight. We can save money in the Department of Defense to reduce our deficit and not compromise by 1 penny the safety and security of the United States. This agreement before us says that both the Department of Defense and all other departments of the government have to look for savings and reduction in spending to move us toward our deficit reduction goal. I think that is a good thing. We are committed here to reducing our deficit. We are committed to creating a joint committee that comes up with specific programs that work. And if we fail, there is a penalty. If the Joint Committee fails to produce a product enacted by the House and Senate, there is a penalty. Under our language of legislation here, it's known as a trigger. And it says if you should fail to reduce the spending and reduce the deficit through the Joint Committee, there will be a price paid, even deeper cuts in spending on both the defense and non-defense side. I don't want to see it move in that direction. I hope that we can find a more balanced approach and do it through the Joint Committee, working on a bipartisan basis with appreciation and respect for one another across the table. We can reach that goal. Erskine Bowles, former Chief of Staff to President Clinton, Alan Simpson, former United States Senator, co-chaired a commission I served on where they sat down and created a template for us to reach a deficit and debt reduction, meaningful deficit and debt reduction over 10 years of more than $4 trillion. I then took that idea with some others, Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, Senator Chambliss of Georgia, Senator Crapo of Idaho, Senator Coburn of Oklahoma, Senator Conrad of North Dakota, and Senator Warner of Virginia, and sat down with a gang of 6 senators. And we took those ideas, turning them into what we thought was a legislative approach that would work. I still think that has merit, and I still think it should be actively considered when we talk about the long-term reduction of debt. It is bipartisan, it is honest, it achieves real debt reduction, and it does it in the fairest possible way. It puts everything on the table, everything. There are no sacred cows. Everything is on the table. It means that it goes beyond spending cuts to the entitlement programs, which make those of us on the Democratic side particularly nervous, but it also goes into revenue, new revenue, to reduce our deficit, which makes those on the other side of the aisle nervous. But what we should be nervous about is a continuing deficit and a weakening economy and a debt left to our children. I believe that this proposal that's before us now, this agreement of the leaders, should be adopted in a timely fashion. I think of all the people that contacted my office from Illinois and beyond during the last several weeks, begging us to do something, not to let this economy fail, to work together and compromise and find a way to resolve our differences. I think that this is a reasonable attempt to do that. I will support it with some misgivings, but will support it, believing that it gives to us the way to get through this crisis and to move to a better place, where we deal with this deficit and debt in a responsible, bipartisan manner, asking for shared sacrifice from all those across America who can make a sacrifice. That is the nature of our nation. It's the nature of our history, where time and again we have rallied as a nation to face even more daunting challenges in the past.